Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're looking at Pahalgam, the Valley of Shepherds. Usually you think of peace, of beauty,
Serene.
but on April 22nd, 2025, that peace was, well, shattered. A terrible attack.
Absolute devastating.
Gunmen targeted civilians. 26 people lost their lives.
And it wasn't random, was it? It felt like it sent a message.
Exactly. Not just isolated violence. It has these ripples, potential consequences way beyond Pahalgam itself.
For the whole region, yeah.
So today we're going to try and unpack what happened, look at the attack itself, then how India and Pakistan reacted politically, militarily, diplomatically.
And try to figure out what it all means going forward.
Yeah, this pushing things towards a bigger crisis, or, is there still some way to find justice, maybe even peace?
It's a critical question.
Yeah.
That attack really highlights how fragile things are there.
Yeah.
Understanding the sequence, the responses, it's key to grasping where this might be heading.
Okay, let's start with the basics. The attack itself, April 22nd. The death toll, 26 people. Our sources say mainly tourists, local civilians, just people there.
Innocent people caught in the crossfire, essentially.
And the nature of it. It sounds particularly disturbing. Targeted firing, reports suggest.
And there was that detail about potentially separating victims based on identity.
That's chilling. It speaks to, a really deliberate, hateful kind of agenda behind it.
It really does. It suggests something beyond just inflicting casualties.
Right.
It's about sowing division, terror.
And then there's the claim of responsibility. This group, TRF, claimed it initially.
They did.
Yeah.
But then, interestingly, they retracted it.
Which just adds more confusion, doesn't it? Why claim and then retract?
Well, it could be anything, really. Internal arguments within the group, maybe external pressure, or perhaps they rethought the strategic implications, made a calculation.
Right. It leaves things murky. And, our sources right now don't have those specific firsthand accounts from survivors or eyewitnesses. But we have to remember them. Behind the number, 26, are real stories, real people, families. That gets lost sometimes in the big picture analysis.
Absolutely. It's easy to talk geopolitics, but this was a brutal human tragedy first and foremost. Keeping that focus is vital as we look at the responses.
So India's response, it was pretty immediate, quite forceful, it seems.
Yeah, very visible. Militarily, they moved fast, more troops into Kashmir.
Standard procedure in some ways, perhaps, securing the area.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah.
A show of force, reassurance for the public. But then there are the other actions.
Like the law enforcement side. Mass detentions, we read. And demolition operations.
Exactly. And those actions, well, they're more complex, aren't they? Detentions on a large scale, demolitions. They always raise questions.
Questions about what? Due process, collective punishment.
Precisely. It's that very difficult balance between acting decisively on security threats and ensuring rights aren't infringed, avoiding actions that could alienate the local population further.
And it didn't stop there. On the ground, India took bigger steps, too. Diplomatically, economically.
Huge steps. Suspending the Indus Waters Treaty that's major.
That treaty's been around a long time, hasn't it? Survived other conflicts.
It really has. It's quite remarkable, actually. Governs water sharing from the Indus River system.
Yeah.
Suspending it. That has real potential consequences for, farming, water access on both sides. It's not a small gesture.
No, definitely not. And then expelling Pakistani diplomats as well.
Another significant escalation. It cuts off those direct lines of communication right when tensions are highest. A very strong signal from India about who they felt was responsible, or at least complicit.
Politically, Prime Minister Modi reacted strongly, condemned it, cut short a foreign trip.
Yeah, that underscored the gravity, right? Signaling this was top priority back home.
And domestically, within India.
A lot of grief, understandably, but also significant public anger, protests, a surge in nationalism. Predictable, perhaps, after something like this.
Okay, so let's switch gears. Pakistan's reaction. What was the official line?
A firm denial. Categorically denied any involvement in the attack.
Which is, well, a fairly standard playbook response in these situations sometimes.
Often, yes. Deny, deflect.
Oh.
But they also put forward a proposal.
Oh, what was that?
They called for an international investigation into the Pahalgam incident.
Interesting. Putting the ball in the international community's court, maybe?
Potentially. It frames it as a disputed event, seeks external validation for their position. Of course, whether that call gains traction depends a lot on, international trust and the overall climate.
How do things play out within Pakistan? Media, politicians?
Our sources mention coverage and statements, but we don't have the specific details on the tone right now. That would definitely add more color.
But there were more worrying signs, too, weren't there? Military tensions.
Yes, reports of cross-border firing along the line of control. 4 nights, apparently.
The Lassi, the de facto border in Kashmir, always a flashpoint.
Exactly. And any increase in firing there, even if claimed as retaliatory, just ratchets up the tension. The risk of miscalculation, of things spiraling, is always present. We'd need to know the exact timing relative to the attack to fully understand the immediate escalation, though.
And all this had an immediate impact on the India-Pakistan relationship itself.
Oh, definitely. A sharp downturn. Reports of the Wagah border closing.
That's the mainland crossing, right? Very symbolic.
Hugely symbolic. Closing it signifies a real deep freeze in relations. Plus, disruptions to trade, diplomatic dialogue just shutting down. It paints a picture of, well, a severe breakdown.
So a really worrying picture bilaterally. What about the rest of the world? How did they react?
Widespread condemnation of the attack itself. The UN, the EU, the US all deplored the violence against civilians.
Expected but necessary statements.
Absolutely. Neighboring countries also chimed in with concern. China's statement was notable.
What did they say?
They called for restraint on both sides.
Yeah.
Fairly typical diplomatic language for them in this context.
Underlines the worry about things escalating further, though.
For sure. Given China's own interests and relationships in the region, that call for restraint highlights the international awareness of the dangers here, especially, the nuclear dimension.
Yeah, that always looms large. Global media picked up on that too, framing Kashmir as a flashpoint.
Constantly.
Yeah.
It taps into that long history of conflict, the unresolved disputes. And yes, the fact that both India and Pakistan are nuclear powers just amplifies the concern immensely. Any major clash there has global implications.
It's not just the high-level politics either. Human rights groups raised flags too.
Yes, reports of concern about civilian crackdowns in the aftermath.
Related to those mass detentions and demolitions we talked about.
Presumably, yes. It highlights that tension again, the state needing to respond to terror, but the crucial need to do so within the bounds of human rights law, avoiding actions that could backfire or harm innocents.
Which really brings us to the crunch point. Where do things go from here? After all this, is there a path forward? What about civil society? Can they play a role?
It's a tough environment, but yes, I think civil society can be important, especially when official talks break down. Peace groups, dialogue initiatives, they can work at the grassroots level.
Building bridges, maybe? Countering the hate?
Exactly. Creating those small spaces for empathy, for understanding, that governments sometimes can't or won't.
That idea of empathy feels crucial. And dialogue. Accountability, too.
Absolutely. The temptation after something horrific like Pahalgam is to politicize it, for nationalistic gain.
Yeah, you can see how that happens.
But our sources suggest that's really damaging. It just hardens positions, digs the trenches deeper, makes actual peace seem even further away.
So, focusing on the victims, demanding real justice for the perpetrators, not just rhetoric, that's more constructive.
I think so. It builds a different kind of foundation, one based on shared loss and a desire for actual resolution rather than just scoring points.
But the peace process itself, it wasn't exactly thriving before this attack, was it?
No, it was fragile at best. An event like this is a massive blow. It genuinely makes you question if reviving any meaningful process is realistic in the short term.
Which leads back to that fundamental question we started with. After Pahalgam, is there any room left for diplomacy, for justice?
Look, in the immediate aftermath, with emotions raw and trust shattered, that space looks incredibly small, maybe non-existent to some.
Yeah.
But history does show that even in the darkest times, paths can emerge. It requires immense political will, though, courage, a recognition from all sides that more conflict helps no one in the long run.
It's a huge ask right now.
It is, but the alternative is potentially much worse.
So Pahalgam, a horrific event, a stark reminder of the human cost. What happens next really matters for the whole region's future.
Not just security, but our shared humanity, as you said earlier.
We owe it to those victims, their families, everyone affected, to keep pushing for truth, for justice, and ultimately, for a peace that isn't just the absence of war, but something genuine, not more bloodshed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If what we've talked about today struck a chord, please share it. Talk about it. These are critical issues.
Dialogue matters.
It really does. In the face of such loss, letting silence be the only legacy of Pahalgam, well, that just doesn't feel right.